Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Motivational Millennial podcast.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So today we are talking with Joe Focus Martinez, who is an incredible photographer and also happens to be one of my closest friends and is an amazing singer. Today in the interview, we're going to hear about Joe's path to his purpose in photography and also some of the challenges and philosophies he's used to overcome those challenges in his creative journey. Joe and I have done a ton of music together over the years, and it was a real pleasure to get to speak with him. Stick around for the after show when Ivy and I will talk about our biggest takeaways from the talk.
Get it! Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial podcast, where we discuss living life with a sense of purpose with members of the millennial generation who are doing just that. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis. Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Joe Martinez. Joe is an editorial and portrait photographer living and working in New York City. His clients include Adidas, the Navy Wounded Warrior Project, Brooklyn Nets, Ronald McDonald House, Varsity Vocals, Yahoo Music, and Memorial Sloan-Kettering Cancer Center. Joe also sings with the a cappella group The Lost Keys, was an American Idol contestant, and has been featured vocalist on my hip-hop albums for the last decade. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So, Joe, before we learn a little bit more about what gives you your sense of purpose, we'd love to know what gets you motivated. So, as you know, at Motivational Millennial, we are huge music fans. What is your jam, that one song that gets you moving and pumped up?
This was the hardest question. I love this question. I've been racking my brain over my favorite songs these last few weeks and kind of what gets me pumped. I think, this is hard to sort of whittle down, but I think the song that sort of made its way through multiple playlist edits and multiple playlists this last year and a half is the song it's called Radioactive. It's by Imagine Dragons, and it's the remix with Kendrick Lamar. I don't know if you guys have heard it. The song is amazing on its own. The original song is really great, but with Kendrick on it, it's in another galaxy. It's so good. His verse hits around the bridge, and when he kind of hits his peak, it's amazing. I totally lose my mind. He's like screaming at the top of his lungs. It totally gets me pumped. I listen to it when I'm running a lot. It kind of pops up in my iPod shuffle, and when it comes on, I could be so tired and totally exhausted, and my legs are dead, and it's the worst run I've ever had. But Kendrick's yelling at me in my headphones every time. By the end of the run, I'm sprinting, whether I like it or not. I first saw the song actually during the Grammy performance that they did together for the first time, and it was so good. I encourage everybody to watch it, find it on YouTube. And when the recorded version came out, I was really happy to hear that the same energy was sort of captured from the live version. So yeah, that's my jam for sure.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm glad you were able to figure one out to share with us.
Yes, it's really tough.
Okay, so this next question then is not as difficult as that one, but we'd love to know, when you wake up in the morning, what do you do to sort of get yourself ready and start yourself off so that you know you're going to have a really great day?
It's kind of a recent thing I've been doing. I try to kind of wake up and just kind of center myself in the morning. I want to start my day in kind of a relaxed and really sort of centered way. So I take some time in the morning, and I don't know if I'd call it meditation, but I try to be kind of mindful, and I close my eyes and sort of concentrate on my breathing and just try to be really aware of my environment and how I'm feeling. I try to stay away from my phone and my computer until I feel like I'm kind of ready. Normally when I wake up, when I wake up, I was kind of a zombie and kind of staring at my phone first thing and my emails right away, and I'm immediately stressed out, and it just starts my day off in this really kind of rushed way. So it's been nice to slow things down in the morning and realize that things don't need to be answered right away, and I can kind of take some time for myself to just be by myself, and like I said, just be really mindful. Gets the day off started in a really peaceful way, which as a freelancer and as sort of a small business owner isn't always easy, because it may be the only time that I have throughout the day to really kind of have that time. So that's what I've been doing lately to kind of start my day off on the right foot.
That's awesome. Did something specific inspire that?
I read a book called 10% Happier. It's by a news correspondent named Dan Harris. I read it, I want to say man, I don't know if it was a year ago or not, pretty recently. Dan Harris used to be a news correspondent, I think for ABC, NBC. He was sort of in the crazy world of news and media where he was very stressed out, and he kind of turned to drugs and turned to all these different things. And he kind of spiraled out of control into this sort of like, angry kind of lost guy. And it all kind of pinnacled with him having a bit of a breakdown live on Good Morning America one morning. And so from there, he sort of started exploring different options of finding new ways to sort of calm down. And he went to therapy, and, it was suggested that he look into meditation. And that's when he kind of got into mindfulness and, just slowing down basically. And it really changed the way he worked and the way he interacted with people. And the book is interesting because he's quick to sort of say, like, listen, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not into the gimmicky like meditation part of it. This works for me. It's as simple as just sort of concentrating on your breathing and being really aware of what's around you and how you're feeling and addressing how you're feeling and confronting how you're feeling about something and not letting it eat at you. So based on that and, some other things, I've really sort of adopted that on my own and made it work for me. It's been helping a lot in my mornings.
Great.
That and like a good breakfast, like bacon is also very important.
Bacon and mindfulness.
Yeah, bacon and mindfulness. That is my answer.
That's part of waking up. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing 10% Happier too. That sounds like a very fascinating read. So along that line, I was wondering if you could share a motivational quote or two that changed your life in some way. If you could share that with us.
One that comes to mind first is a quote by Maya Angelou. I have it here. I'm going to read it. Creativity or talent, like electricity, is something I don't understand, but something I'm able to harness and use. While electricity remains a mystery, I know I can plug into it and light up a cathedral or a synagogue or an operating room and use it to help save a life. Or I can use it to electrocute someone. Like electricity, creativity makes no judgment. I can use it productively or destructively. The important thing is to use it. You can't use up creativity. The more you use it, the more you have. I love that quote, and it kind of reminds me that, creativity is a muscle. You have to use it, and you have to be aware of it, and always, if you stop using it, it's like a muscle. It gets weaker, and your creativity suffers. So, and your art suffers. So I love that quote by Maya Angelou. And the other one I have for you guys is a quote by Seth Godin, which I really love and which, really inspires me in my work. It goes, here's the thing about proving skeptics wrong. They don't care. They won't learn. They will stay skeptics. The ones who said the airplane would never fly ignored the success of the Wright brothers and went on to become skeptical of something else. And when they got onto an airplane, they didn't apologize to the engineers on their way in. Instead of working so hard to prove the skeptics wrong, it makes a lot more sense to delight the true believers. They deserve it, after all, and they're the ones that are going to spread the word for you. I love that quote, and I think a lot of artists sort of go through their careers or start their careers trying to prove someone wrong, trying to prove that they can do this thing, and they have so many people on their side and so many people who support them. And I think those people sometimes get ignored. And the quote is so right in that those are the people who want you to do well. Like, you should be doing work for them. The naysayers stay naysayers. They're haters for a reason. I don't think they should motivate you. The people who are rooting for you and the people who support you and who want you to win, those are the people that should motivate you. That quote is really just, it helps to push me in my photography and especially helps to push me in showing my work too. I think a lot of people get a little discouraged. There's so much great photography on the internet and so much great photography in the world that it gets you discouraged about showing your work because you're like, oh, well, so-and-so's out there and they're going to see it and not think it's that good. And, it doesn't compare to this work and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, who cares about them? And who cares about, what they think or being compared to someone else? There are so many people out there who love to see your work and would love to see it. So post it, put it out there, don't be afraid and don't let self-doubt and fear kind of get in your way. So I really love that quote.
That's amazing. I love both of them. They're so validating. I think it's just a really great way that they're both really encouraging you to be creative and to put yourself out there. And it's something that is really, really, really helpful for all of us to remember, right?
Yeah, it's so hard too, because it's hard to put yourself out there through any social media platform. I think, Facebook, Instagram, all these things. Every time, like right before you hit the post button, there's like a little trepidation of like, is this like okay? Is this, are people going to respond to this in a positive way? The people who like it and support you are going to love it. And that's all that should matter. You shouldn't be afraid, and you shouldn't care about those who may have a negative reaction to it. Who cares? They're skeptics for a reason. They're always going to be skeptics, like the quote says. Give work to the people who deserve it and the people who support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Yeah. What we love to hear about next is more about your sense of purpose. And so if you'd tell us a story about a defining moment in your life that helped you realize this sense of purpose.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I'm going to get Blake in on this. Story. Yeah. I'm like, feel free to fill in the gaps if I'm missing anything on this story. I went to grad school in Atlanta for photography. I went to a school called the Portfolio Center. It was a 2-year program. I learned so much there and really learned to hone my photography skills and collaborative skills with a lot of other creatives. And I stayed in Atlanta for about 4 years after I finished the program. And I was freelancing and getting into assisting and kind of finding my feet in my career. I guess around 2011, I kind of hit a place where I was not really sure where I wanted to go next, and work was really slowing down in Atlanta for me. And I kind of hit a place where I was very discouraged in my work and in the lack of work. And so I kind of hit a place where I couldn't really stay in Atlanta too much longer. And I had a couple options. I could either kind of move home, back in with mom and dad, and sort of reassess and, kind of get back on my feet financially and get back on my feet creatively. Or, I had been to New York a few times to visit Blake and to visit some other creative friends and graphic designers, a lot of people who I'd gone to school with. And, those trips had always been really inspiring and really fun. And so New York was my other option. It was either like go home and sleep in the guest bedroom at mom and dad's and figure it out, which, like nothing wrong with that. Or go to New York and like give it a shot and put it all on the line for this. So one of my last trips to New York before I left, I was hanging out with Blake. We were recording some stuff for his album Scholar, writing some music and sort of, taking some pictures, and we had a great time. Within the trip, I was sort of expressing to him my feelings and how I was sort of at a crossroads with, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And, Blake asked me, well, like, why wouldn't you move here? Like, you have so many contacts and so many people that why wouldn't you come to New York? I told him, the city's always been like this big, it's just too big for me. And it's been this big mystery to me, and it's too fast and too expensive, and, I'm not good enough, and there are already too many photographers here, and blah, blah, blah. I was coming up with a lot of excuses, basically, and coming up with reasons why I would fail. And I think I even told Blake that. I was like, I'm going to fail. Like, there's no way I can make it here. And Blake sort of counteracted my very negative musings with just like, well, what if you're successful? And what if you do really well? And if this is a place that you flourish, and what if this is the place that you're supposed to be? And it was such a really simple question and a simple counter argument. I had been so stuck in my potential failure that I hadn't even considered if I would be successful. So when Blake asked that, it totally blew my mind. And I think I even like got up and like walked away. I really was like, oh my God, that's really crazy. I had to like go and take a moment. But it was such a very important point for me and a very important conversation. And one, just because I never really considered those ideas. And, I thank Blake for kind of giving me that perspective and kind of opening that new path for me. And I got back to Atlanta just really inspired and, with these like new questions in my head, like, what if I am successful? What if this is a good idea? Stuff I hadn't thought of before. And eventually I came to the decision I think New York is the place for me. And, I'm going to go and try it. And I've got people who love me and support me there and who, like I said, want me to win and want me to do really well. And so I made the decision, and I think I called Blake when I was like pacing in my house, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I called Blake and I was like, man, I think I'm coming to New York. And he was so excited. And he was like, you got a floor to crash on and a couch to sleep on. Me and, we're more than happy to have you. So that was so important and so great, and just a really important move for me. And since being here, that early conversation always sticks out to me. when I do get to shoot for Adidas and when I do get to shoot for, the Ronald McDonald House and do really great work for them, and when I do get to shoot for really great clients like Varsity Vocals and, the Brooklyn Nets and people like this. And, I always think back to that conversation, and it's like, wow, like I'm here doing exactly what I want to do and really, being successful. So that was a big moment for me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing the story from your perspective. It is really interesting to hear it.
Yeah, right.
As you're describing that, I'm just remembering one of the things when you were in New York talking about potentially moving and your concerns. I remember just thinking to myself, I wish he could see himself the way I see him, because I think it's one of those things where it's so easy to doubt ourselves, and we know all our flaws intimately. We know all the ways we are not perfect and all the things we could be doing better and how we're not living up to our potential. But I think sometimes it does help to have someone who says, when have you ever truly failed? Not like in your mind, not like a little bit,
That was the other question. It was like, when has this ever like really blown up in your face? And that was the other thing that another question that I came home with. I was like, wow, I guess I never have bombed at this or anything. Like, I'm doing okay. But yeah, totally. But you're right. And I think we talked about that. Are you really scared of failing, or are you really scared of succeeding? Are you afraid of self-sabotage, really? And that's what I was doing. I think I was self-sabotaging myself, and there was so much fear and self-doubt, and it just was so hard to get out of that mindset. And yeah, you do need sometimes another perspective, an outside perspective, to come along and to really like point out like you're doing okay, and that you haven't. Yeah, you're right. Like, when have you failed? Like, when have you actually failed at this? Why wouldn't you be successful at this? Yeah, it's really important to have that. Definitely.
So I'm really inspired by this story and can relate to Blake's influence on helping you move across the country.
Right.
Myself. I'd be curious to know, I know this is something, that I experienced, that when I moved, I was just surprised by certain things that made me want to grow, certain things that made me want to achieve, become a different person, a happier person than I ever thought myself possible. Is there an experience that stands out for you that really surprised you about moving there, that you feel like, affected you and changed your life in some way?
I remember when I was talking to Blake, and, we were just kind of talking about like, why not New York? And I was just going through all these reasons, like, oh, it's so big, it's too fast, it's too much. The people aren't as like, it's too, I live in the South. Everyone's very warm and like, hey, sweetie, and things like this. And so like, I was afraid of sort of leaving that comfort zone. But when I got here, I realized that like, it was amazing to be surrounded by so many people who had the same fears as I did too, but who were also like open and genuine, and people who were like hustling like me. It was amazing to be around other creative people and other people in general who were really passionate about what they did and passionate about their careers and their lives. And being around those people was so inspiring and made me feel so much more at home here. And then just being able, like realizing that I was able to kind of keep up with the pace of the city and thrive in it was totally life-changing. And for me, it just reaffirmed the decision to come out and give it a shot, and to know that I could do it and keep up, and that I was getting praise from photographers that I really looked up to, and other creatives that I really looked up to was awesome, and it meant so much. You get that affirmation, and you feel like this was the right decision. It totally confirms that for you.
That's a great point. I think the sense of community is really huge, and that's one of the great myths that we live under, is that we are alone. And, and we will be alone, and we're going to go through it all alone. But I love what you say about arriving there, finding the sense of people who are at the same place you are, who are striving to accomplish the same things, and who are supporting you. And that's something I think we can always look for, but also that we can create. And I know you've been really encouraging to other photographers who have been coming up and answering questions on Tumblr when they ask you and things like that. And I think that's so huge, and I love that you share that.
Yeah, I think especially as artists, we all feel this very sort of, I have to go this alone. I'm solo. I have to keep all my secrets to myself about like how I work and, my process. I've been so lucky to have photographers and mentors who shared so much with me. They've just been so generous with their information, with their time. Like, of course I want to pass that on. And of course I want that. I want to create a sense of community. I want other people to go and talk to about if we're going through a really rough time in the industry, if we're going, if work's been really slow, I love going and talking to other photographers and other creatives about that because you're not alone, and you see that you have so much more in common with other people, and you don't have to be this like sad, lonely, stereotypical like artist, like alone in the dark in a studio, brooding. so I enjoy that sense of community. And again, I thought New York was way too big, but it's actually a really small world and a really cool, tight knit community. And there are so many different subgenres of photographers and photography that you find a lot of different people and doing the things you really enjoy doing and shooting the things you really enjoy shooting. So it's easy to find like that community, and like social media and Twitter and Tumblr and Instagram have made all that even more easier to kind of find and connect. So yeah, I encourage all photographers to get out there and do that. I don't think you need to be like alone and thinking that you have to go through this New York journey or any artistic journey by yourself. There are too many resources out there and too many other great photographers who are doing the things you're doing or trying to do to do that and to like think you're by yourself and all this.
That's a great encouragement. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now, you're more established in New York. And what are you excited about for the future? And, how do you feel that your sense of purpose helps you stay focused on those goals?
Well, I'm really excited about just working with new clients and coming up, and new opportunities to sort of push myself as an artist. It feels lately like I'm coming into my own as a photographer, and I think I've always had a style. I feel like I'm sort of starting to see it now, which I think takes a while, and it changes, with the subjects and the clients and things like that. But I think I'm really sort of finding that lately. Things feel like they're clicking, which is a good feeling. So, I'm looking to travel a lot more this year and sort of start building a portfolio of images that sort of really get across the story of the place I'm in and the people that sort of inhabit it. Having those goals and that motivation and just the motivation to keep pushing myself visually as an artist and pushing myself as a person with, travel and more interactions and, building that community a bit more, my network a bit more, keeps me really, really motivated and keeps me really excited about, New York and about being here and doing what I do. I think it's really easy to sort of get down in a rut creatively. It happens to me, from time to time. But having those goals and having sort of something to work towards always helps to get out of it and helps to sort of keep pushing yourself. That's sort of how I stay kind of focused, is having something out there that I'm looking forward to. And it helps that my photography is kind of coming together these days and people are starting to recognize it. So yeah, it's nice.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this defining moment and a little bit more words of wisdom.
Yeah, no worries.
We are not finished with you yet, though. We would love to know, what advice would you like to give for those of us who are still searching for this sense of purpose and meaning in our lives?
I would say travel for me has been it's just been so essential for me. I grew up traveling. My parents were in the Navy. We traveled and kind of jumped around my whole life. But even now, I see the value in it. And I think I encourage people, creative or not, to sort of get out of your comfort zone and get out into the world. And it doesn't have to be an international trip. I see all these Facebook posts about, this person like sold all their possessions and traveled for 8 years. Found their purpose. Like, you don't have to do all that. That's so dramatic and like not realistic. Like, all you have to do is like drive to a town you've never been to. Like, go out into the world and like experience these things. And the smallest interactions can have such a big effect on you, I think. And you should seek out those interactions and seek out things that maybe make you a little uncomfortable and, say yes to more things and get more stories under your belt. Go out and do interesting things. Interesting people do interesting things, and they have interesting stories and adventures, and they may be small and they may be mundane, but they go out and do them. Go out there. I mean, that's how you find your purpose, I think, by talking to people, interacting with people. And I think that's how because you hear their stories and you hear their experiences. And I think you can't just wait to arrive at those things. You have to go and hear them. You have to go and experience them for yourself. So yeah, I really encourage people to get out, get away from your computer.
Yeah.
Get off the couch and get out there. If you're a photographer, get out there and go shoot while you do it. If you're a writer, go write while you do it. If you're anything, just go and like be in the world and and find it. So
yeah, it's like it gives you a sense of what's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. You go out and you hear what's possible and you see what's possible, like through your interactions with people. And that's important. You can't just wait for that to come to you. So go and find it.
I love that, and I think I definitely relate to that myself in the sense of it's really easy to be sitting there and running over and over in your mind, like, what should I do? What should I be?
Right,
what should I do?
right.
And you're totally right. It's like going out and doing things and traveling and experiencing new things are always a phenomenal catalyst. And every single time I do, I'm so thankful. And I'm like, why did I spend all those hours just sitting there? Like,
this was out here the whole time.
Exactly. And you're totally right. I love what you said about it doesn't have to be a giant international travel. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for traveling abroad. Some of my most formative moments have been by living overseas, but you were absolutely right. Sometimes it's just walking out your door and wandering around your neighborhood for an hour and you don't even know what you might find.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been around the world. Like I studied abroad in Australia, and it was some of like probably the most important time of my life as someone being in college and sort of figuring out what I wanted to do. But those moments can happen anywhere, and they can happen. Like you said, you could wander out of your front door and just go like cruise around your hometown and go to places that you wouldn't normally go and talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to, and those same experiences can be had. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, great. Well, we'd love for you to have an opportunity to just share where people can find you, online or your social media so that they can see what your work is all about.
Yeah, well, my main website is Joe Martinez Photography. So, yeah, www.joemartinezphotography.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm Joe Focus, @JoeFocus on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm Joe Martinez. Encourage everyone to follow along on the adventure.
Well, it has been an adventure. And Joe, thank you so much for being a motivational millennial and for being with us today.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate having me. Good luck with everything. I'm excited for what you guys are doing. And yeah, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right, so it's time for the post-interview debrief, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited to talk about some of the things that really resonated with me that Joe Martinez shared with us today.
Absolutely. I feel like we got a great sense of his journey, and he had some fantastic advice that has definitely given me pause for thought, and I'm excited to talk about it.
So for me, one of the things that really stuck out is his journey going to New York. I just thought that was so great because, I just recently moved to the Bay Area, and before that I was living in Arkansas, and I had no idea that I was going to be moving to such a large city. I had no idea what to expect, and when I made that decision, I knew in my heart that I was going to grow, that I was going to experience things that I couldn't even possibly imagine. All I knew was that this was the next right step. I didn't know what was going to happen after that, but I knew, okay, this is what needs to happen. And I felt, really called and inspired to do that. And after I moved here, it took a little bit of while for me to get adjusted to new surroundings and all of that. But after I got my feet under me, I started to really explore some of the communities here. And for me, what's important is spiritual communities. And being in the Bay Area, there are a number of them, a large number of them. And so I found those, and I found some writing communities. And what I really realized is that when you surround yourself with people whose souls are fed by the same thing that feeds your soul, I mean, it's the most amazing, validating, awesome thing. I can really resonate with the things that he was saying about how that just totally changes your perspective and puts you on this amazing path and this trajectory for sure.
Absolutely. I think finding that community takes some deliberate action often, and I think you've been doing a great job of recognizing, okay, I'm not quite sure what exists, but here's the type of thing I want to create in my life. And then seeking out and trying different things. I think sometimes there's this idea that we have to find the perfect thing the first time we try, or, for your experience with spirituality, the first church or faith organization that you meet up with, like, it has to be the one. And I think you've done a great job of trying different ones and seeing what communities do you like and what forms of expression really resonate with you and which people are there and how do they present themselves in the world. And That's hard because I think it takes time, it takes emotional energy, especially if we're in a new place and we already feel kind of overwhelmed. But it's really powerful, and I think helps our development immensely.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember is that, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy decision for me to make that, to move out here. And I'm sure that it wasn't, obviously it wasn't an easy decision for Joe, as he mentioned. And it wasn't easy after I made the decision either. I mean, I made that decision, and there were actually moments, especially leading up, the month or so leading up, when I was, selling all of my stuff and packing everything up, where I had to reconvince myself that this was a really great idea, and had to reconnect with that belief and knowing and faith that this was the right decision over and over and over again. Setting out to find that sense of purpose and discovering that part of yourself isn't always going to be an easy path, isn't always going to be just straight. There's going to be winding roads, and there's going to be up and downs, and just, sticking with it, I think, is really the biggest thing. And then you'll realize, wow, you'll be able to look back and say, look how far I've come. That's so crazy.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I loved about his reflection in it, was the decision point to make that journey. Because you're right, it is a lot to overcome just to make the decision to make a major life transition, especially moving somewhere new. And I think the questions that you ask yourself really make such a huge difference. I was obviously really touched and grateful to him that he shared the story of how our conversation affected his decision. And it made me think about all the times when I am scared of owning my greatness. I really like that idea of owning your greatness and asking yourself, what if I'm successful? How could this work? How could this be amazing? Instead of, how could this go wrong? Like, what am I afraid of? I think it's good to acknowledge those things, because it gives you a sense of maybe control and planning. But if we focus on them, it's so easy to play small, to hide, to say we're not good enough, to say we don't have enough information or money or contacts or friends or knowledge. All of those things, they might be true, but the reality is we don't make any progress without taking risks. And I think what you've done and what Joe did with the move to New York is huge. And it takes being willing to leap. And then when you land, being willing to get up and start running.
Has there been a time in your life where this mantra of, what if I'm successful, has really helped you?
Absolutely. Starting with the motivational blog raps that we've been doing recently over the past year. At the beginning, I had so many doubts about it. Everything from where are we going to film these blog raps to, am I going to read off a script, or am I going to have to try to memorize them every week? What if people think I'm a bad rapper? Or what if my image isn't great? There's so many doubts and questions that come into it. And I think the decision to start was the most powerful thing we did, because we said we're going to release a motivational blog rap video once a week, along with a blog post that's about some topic that will help people in some way, whether it's about overcoming fear, dealing with challenges in your life, how to focus on your career, or think through who you want to be and how you want to be in the world. Through all those topics, just the commitment to doing it every week was really powerful. And I think, but it started with that initial decision. In the same way this podcast, it started with an initial decision that said, we're going to interview amazing millennials who have a sense of purpose and who are doing useful and helpful and inspiring things in the world. And we want to talk to them. And we don't necessarily know a whole lot about podcasting, but we are really committed to making a difference and connecting with these people and celebrating them and giving them a platform to share their message. And so we've been doing that.
Yeah, I think, what if you're successful? When I think of that related to the blog raps, for me, sort of the pinnacle that I was most excited for you, especially, was the one you did about Brene Brown and vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And just the moment when Brene Brown actually reposted that on her own Facebook page and retweeted it, that was amazing. And we would never been able to envision that happening before we started. And I just remember seeing that thinking, oh my gosh, now Brene Brown knows who Blake is, you know, and it was just like, it was just this really great, you know, experience. And I still think about that now when I think of Brene Brown, and that success, wouldn't have come, you know, without that willingness to start and just believe that it's even possible. Like, what if that's the case, you know?
Yeah, that's a great example, because I think the fear is, what if people make fun of it? I wasn't even thinking, what if 6,000 people watch it and then post all these comments about how it has helped them think about dealing with their defense mechanisms and overcoming their fears of vulnerability? And so, we get so hung up on what could go wrong and and sure, a couple people, might not have been the biggest fans of it. But, they were drastically outnumbered by all the people who said, wow, this is really powerful. Thank you. I'm going to share this with people. And so it was a great reminder, and you're right, very humbling, I think, too, to say, if you start off with something that is out there with the express purpose of helping people in some way, you just never know where it might go if you stick with it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really grateful to Joe and him sharing and getting us talking about all this great stuff and feeling pretty excited and inspired and motivated.
Absolutely. So huge thanks to Joe. Thank you all for listening. We are so excited to be bringing you motivational millennials from all across the globe who are doing incredible, inspiring things. And we would also love to hear from you. If you could rate and review the show on iTunes, check out our website. We would love to hear from you and have you be part of this conversation as well.
Thank you.
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis.
Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!